The true story behind A Charlie Brown Christmas and the music of Vince Guaraldi. I'm John Bode from nailsheet.com. For many, it's required viewing, a story about an awkward boy trying to find the meaning behind Christmas. It may even be more poignant now since the word Christmas is not always welcomed at the door. Still, A Charlie Brown Christmas has set the mood for millions of families for a long time. It's the soundtrack of our lives between Thanksgiving and New Year's Eve. And as important as Charles Schulz was with the cartoon, it's undeniable that the soundtrack made a huge difference. Basic animation for kids was common in the 60s, but Charlie Brown and his pals were moving in slow motion in comparison to, let's say, Bugs Bunny and the Flintstones. And young Mr. Brown was a deep thinker with a palate of all things for jazz. A Charlie Brown Christmas producer Lee Mendelson says bringing Charles Schulz and Vince Guaraldi together was a perfect storm of lucky bounces, a plethora of happenstance. In 1963, Mendelson heard Vince Guaraldi Trio's Cast Your Fate to the Wind as he was crossing the Golden Gate Bridge. Mendelson had been working on the Charles Schulz documentary, but he had no soundtrack. After crossing that bridge, he heard the announcer saying that was the Vince Guaraldi Trio with Cast Your Fate to the Wind. At that point, he'd never heard of the artist. And that's all it took to bring all parties together. By the way, in 1963, that song that he heard on the radio, Cast Your Fate to the Wind, won Best Jazz Composition. Ultimately, though, that first project, that documentary on Charles Schulz, was not a success. But after viewing it, the Coca-Cola company asked Mendelson for a Charlie Brown Christmas special. So he picks up the phone and calls Schulz. Mendelson remembers, I said, I think I sold a Charlie Brown Christmas. And Schulz says, what in the world is that? And I said, it's something we're going to write tomorrow. Then there's a long pause. Charles Schulz says, all right, come on up. That bittersweet theme that runs across A Charlie Brown Christmas is etched in our memories. Perhaps it's echoed in our adult holiday emotions, more than when we were the size, let's say, of Charlie Brown. My parents watched it year after year with me, and I'm sure their takeaway to A Charlie Brown Christmas was probably different than mine. I only know that now walking in their own shoes. Even though the Disney company perfected that two-tiered storyline to satisfy both the kids and the adults, but in A Charlie Brown Christmas, Schulz and Guaraldi were way ahead in that game. One of the many themes in A Charlie Brown Christmas, kids wish for more as much as adults wish they had the means to give their munchkins everything. Guaraldi finished recording the music for A Charlie Brown Christmas in 3 hours, which was very common for jazz music back then. His trio added jazz and blues to the 1824 German carol O Tannenbaum. It plays while Linus tells Charlie by the tiny Christmas tree. This doesn't seem to fit the modern spirit. Charlie picks up the tree and it falls apart. The centerpiece of the soundtrack, and we all know it, was it really a Christmas song, we'd ask ourselves back then, was Linus and Lucy. It was a tune that was actually used on the very first project, the Schulz documentary. And of course, we all know Christmas Time is Here. It was originally an all-instrumental piece, but just before airtime, Guaraldi thought it needed some words. I mean, A Charlie Brown Christmas was heavy. At times, Charlie Brown would look at the camera and say, I know nobody likes me. Why do we have a holiday season that seems to emphasize it? I remember as a kid thinking, well, my Christmas must be okay because I'm not depressed. Hell, he pays Lucy, who's bordering in sociopathy, 5 cents for advice that he'd never use. Mixing themes of holiday commercialization, religious messages, and peer pressure, and of course friendship, the show managed to juggle a lot of different things, and at the end, it seemed to work. Charles Monroe Schulz, who created the Peanuts, was born on November 26, 1922. His dad, Carl, was a German immigrant and barber, and his mom, Dina, a waitress and homemaker. He was their only child and from an early age wanted to do cartoons. His career, however, had to wait after he was drafted in 1942. Unfortunately, his mom died of cervical cancer as he was just getting out of basic training. He then went on to fight in World War II. The philosophical cast of the Peanuts made their debut on 7 newspapers on October 2nd, 1950. Charlie Brown's dog was based on Schulz's own dog, Spike, and even that pulling away the football before the kick, that stunt by Lucy, was based on a childhood incident. It really happened. By 1960, the whole Peanuts gang were featured on Hallmark greeting cards and ads to sell Ford cars and trucks. Schulz died in his sleep on February 12, 2000, the night before his final Peanuts cartoon was published. The lead voice of Charlie Brown was done by a 9-year-old Peter Robbins. He did 6 Peanuts specials. He's now 60, and in jail. He's had a lot of legal problems and has been charged with felony counts of making threats to cause death or great bodily injury, and one felony count of stalking. He himself has admitted that he's suffering from bipolar disorder and paranoid schizophrenia. Actor Shea was 7 when he debuted as Linus. He's known as the good guy. His younger brothers Eric and Steven were also actors. Chris did some other acting, including the short-lived Western TV show Shane. Made guest appearances on a lot of different shows, from Bonanza, The Invaders, Green Acres, and The Odd Couple. And like Robbins, who voiced Charlie Brown, Chris was also in a bunch of specials. He later became a character actor and died at the age of 52 from natural causes. Tracy Stratford did an amazing job as Lucy. She was the very first one of many, like Linus, like Charlie Brown, to voice those characters. And I think we all went to school with someone who was like Lucy. Sometimes they were challenging to be around, but always entertaining. She was only 10 years old during the taping of A Charlie Brown Christmas. Stratford also appeared in The Miracle of the Hills in 1959, The New Loretta Young Show in 62, and The Twilight Zone in 1959. At the time of this taping, she's 61 and hasn't acted since 1969. Like Schulz, Vince Guaraldi went to war. In his case, it was the Korean War. That very first Charlie Brown soundtrack was recorded with 2 other members of his trio, drummer Jerry Granelli and bassist Fred Marshall. And believe it or not, Guaraldi provided music for 17 Peanuts television specials. He died young at only 47 on February 6, 1976. He had supper with Peanuts producer Lee Mendelson, and after, he was complaining of not feeling well. The next night, between sets at a nightclub in California, he collapsed in his hotel room. Cause of death was heart attack or aortic aneurysm. Last year, on December 9th, was the 50th anniversary of A Charlie Brown Christmas. It remains one of the most loved holiday institutions today. But interestingly, CBS was not happy with the final product in '65. They thought it was too long, too slow-moving, and that the jazz music didn't work, which were all valid points. But on its first viewing, 45% of the people watching TV were watching A Charlie Brown Christmas. That's an estimated 15,490 people watching, placing it number 2, right behind Bonanza on NBC. And critics loved it too. The New York World Telegram especially loved that famous Linus scene near the end, where Linus is reading scripture and explaining the meaning of Christmas. The special won an Emmy Award for Outstanding Children's Program in 1966. To which Charles Schulz responded, "Charlie Brown is not used to winning, so we thank you." And let's remember, Charlie Brown and the Peanuts were already a big hit in newspapers before the TV special A Charlie Brown Christmas. But after that, they were huge. The whole thing from the beginning to end has been surreal, Mendelson says. The fact that it's become such a permanent part of the holiday season is surreal. And every time I hear it on the radio or I hear it in the store, I realize we were very lucky to have been associated with Mr. Schulz and all his characters. A few years ago, Saturday Night Live did a tribute to A Charlie Brown Christmas as a stage play for adults. If you get a chance, check it out on YouTube. It's quite funny. And of all things, Stranger Things had a animated version of A Charlie Brown Christmas. Look that up if you get a chance. Of all the Charlie Browns in the world, you're the Charlie Browniest. Linus would tell his friend, who would make us smile and wince at the same time. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. We'll be doing a lot more specials on classic TV shows and the truth and hidden stories behind them. Make sure you embed our videos on your channel if you like, or share our videos, subscribe to our channel. I'm John Bowden from nailsheet.com.